Deepak Chopra. You're watching One World with Deepak Chopra. My very special guest today is the legendary fashion designer. Everyone knows who he is, Calvin Klein. Thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure to be here. Love doing
We've known each other a while.
A long time.
Yes. I think late 80s is when we met first.
Up in Massachusetts.
That's right.
It was a great experience.
Yeah, I remember.
I cherish that time that we spent with you. And it wasn't the beginning of me trying to meditate, but it was such an informative few days. The classes and the meditation and everything that we did. I think I've always been on some kind of a search to find peace and balance in life, because I tended to be the kind of person who does all or nothing.
You're flamboyant.
Well, excessive or so committed to something, and generally it was my work that I was just so committed to achieve some kind of perfection, and that doesn't allow for a rational, balanced life. So then I would look for meditation or different ways of finding spirituality.
Let's go a little back into your childhood. You grew up where?
I grew up in New York, in the Bronx.
In the Bronx.
I always knew what I wanted to do with my work, my life. I was an artist from a very young age. I started sketching when I was 5. I knew I was influenced by my grandmother, who was a dressmaker.
Tell me about your grandmother. She was a seamstress, right?
She was a seamstress, and so she had a little shop where she made clothes for people, or did.
Where, in the Bronx?
In the Bronx, right in the neighborhood where we lived. So I spent a great deal of time with her. I was very close to her, and that was the only person in my family who had anything to do with the fashion business. But somehow I knew from an early age, and maybe it was the influence of my mother, who loved clothes and style, and she had a particular style, that influenced me to continue my artwork, my schooling, and then eventually get into art and design.
Somewhere I read about a very interesting coincidence that kind of launched your career in a way. Somebody got off the wrong floor or something?
They didn't get off the wrong floor, but I knew after I graduated FIT and then worked for different people for a few years that I wanted to start my own little company. And I had this idea of making a few samples at night and on the weekends while I was still working.
Samples of what?
Samples of what we would make. And,
like
dresses, a few dresses and some coats, and it was just a very small, maybe 10, 12 pieces.
And this is after you finished FIT?
After I finished FIT, and while I was working on a job, and then I left the job and took a room in a hotel where out-of-town manufacturers would show on 7th Avenue in the Garment Center. And I took this room, I had my little samples, and I had told some New York stores that I was going to do this, and would they support me and maybe buy what I was making.